All right, so if you want to be successful in algebra, well, then you must be able to do a problem like this. Okay, so what's going on here? Well, we have a rational expression, which is effectively a fraction where the numerator and denominator are polynomials. And what we're trying to do here is simplify this rational expression. So you kind of think of it as a fraction like, say, 10 over 30 and we want to reduce the fraction. All right, now, if you think you know the answer, go ahead and put that into the comment section. I'll show you the correct answer in just 1 second. Then, of course, I'm going to walk through step by step how to solve this problem. But before we get started, let me quickly tell you who I am. My name is John, and I have been teaching middle and high school math for decades. And if you want a nice, easy to understand way to learn math, well, then check out my math help program at tcmathacademy.com. You can find a link to that in the description below. And if this video helps you out, or if you just enjoy this content, make sure to like and subscribe, as that definitely helps me out. All right, now the main kind of topic of this video is really going to be factoring. Okay, I'm going to be doing a lot of work here. So I want to be factoring the numerator and then factoring the denominator, and then, of course, simplifying this rational expression. So if you are having a tough time in factoring in algebra, well, this would be a good video for you. But let's take a look at the correct answer. The correct answer here is 3c minus 4 over 2c plus 1. Okay, now if you got this right, that is very good. Matter of fact, you're definitely going to get a happy face and an A plus. And if you're like, Mr. YouTube Math, man, I struggle in algebraic factoring or factoring polynomials, well, don't feel bad because a lot of people do. And this is a critical skill to be successful in algebra. All right, so once again, we have a rational expression, which is effectively a fraction where the numerator and denominator are polynomials. So let's just kind of think again of, let's use 10 over 15. Now, this is a fraction or a rational number. This is a rational expression. So in algebra, again, we don't refer to something like this as a fraction per se. We call this a rational expression, but this is a fraction, but the concept or the procedure is effectively the same. So let's take a look at a simple fraction like 10 over 15. Now, if I want to reduce or simplify this fraction, what we do is factor the numerator and denominator, right? So we look for factors. So 10 we can factor as 2 times 5, and 15 we can factor as 3 times 5. So what we're trying to do is factor the numerator and denominator with the goal of identifying like factors that are in the numerator and the denominator. So if we can find them, we can cross cancel, and then whatever's left over is the simplified fraction. So 10 fifteenths, we can reduce to the fraction 2/3. Okay, so same concept here. We need to factor the numerator and denominator. Now, I'm going to kind of give you a bit of a warning here. I'm going to be going through a lot of steps. So a lot of you are probably going to get, very frustrated, especially if you're having a tough time with factoring. So my suggestion is maybe pause the video, rewind the video. But if you're having a tough time with factoring, these polynomials that I'm going to be factoring here in a second could be a little bit challenging, right? So don't feel bad about that. So let me give you a couple quick suggestions before we get into the problem. All right, so in factoring, algebraic factoring, you need to know a lot of different things: greatest common factor, how to factor a trinomial, etc., etc. So I have a ton of additional videos on my YouTube channel. Also, you may want to consider my full algebra course. You can find a link to that in the description of this video. Okay, so let's go ahead and focus in on the numerator first. So we're going to factor this, and then after that, we'll factor the denominator, and then we'll go ahead and take the next step. So let's go ahead and try to factor 15c squared minus 23c plus 4. Or rather, maybe you want to try to factor it and see if you can get the right answer. All right, so let's go ahead and do that right now. And here is the correct answer. All right, so this is the numerator. We have 15c squared minus 23c plus 4. Now, in algebra, we call this thing a quadratic trinomial. So it's a trinomial. First of all, it's a polynomial, and it's a trinomial because there's three terms, 1, 2, 3, and it's quadratic because the leading term is degree 2. All right, so hopefully most of you are out there like, yes, Mr. YouTube Math Man, I see that this is a quadratic trinomial. And you absolutely need to be able to understand quadratic functions, quadratic equations, and algebra. All right, so this is the answer. Okay, so if you're able to factor this, this is what you should have come up with. So it's parentheses 5c minus 1 times 3c minus 4, or 3c minus 4 times 5c minus 1. The order is not important, but these are the factors. So anytime you can factor a quadratic trinomial, you're going to typically end up with two binomials just like this. So this is a binomial. There's two things here, and this is a binomial. Now, if we multiply these two binomials, we'll get back to this. So if you're not quite sure if you have the right factors, you can always multiply and check. So we can use the FOIL method. So 5c times 3c is what? That's 15c squared. And then 5c times this negative 4 is negative 20c. And then negative 1 times 3c is negative 3c. So when we add these terms together, we're going to get back to negative 23c. And then negative 1 times negative 4 is a positive 4. Okay, so once again, if you're like, hey, Mr. YouTube Math Man, you're going too fast, I don't understand this stuff. Well, again, follow up or just kind of make a little itemized list of what you think you don't understand. So this is polynomial multiplication, and specifically, you can kind of take a look at something called the FOIL method. All right, so again, this is the correct factor or the factors of this polynomial. Now, if you're able to do this, that is fantastic, okay? But I can tell you right now, if you are trying to be successful in algebra, you must be able to factor something like this, all right? So this is kind of non-negotiable, but if you're not quite sure how to factor this, well, I'm going to review this right now. All right, so this is the answer, but how do we get to this answer? All right, I'm actually going to show you two techniques here. All right, now this is probably the most common way people learn factoring. So when you have a quadratic trinomial, all right, we don't really know if it can be factored. In other words, if you have a number, like let's say like 18, well, of course we can factor this as 6 times 3. But if we have the number 19, well, this is a prime number, so the only factor is 1 and the number. And the same thing holds true for any polynomial. In other words, this thing could be prime. In other words, it may not be able to be factored. All right, so we just don't know, but we have to try. Okay, so when you go into a problem, you can't just say, all right, there's got to be an answer. Well, no, sometimes if you can't, if you tried everything and you still can't find factors, well, then we would just call this thing a prime polynomial, all right, or unfactorable. Okay, so once again, here is the answer. Now, here is typically, or here's a typical way that people learn how to factor trinomials or quadratic trinomials. So here is kind of that procedure. So we're going to go ahead and focus in on the leading term here, 15c squared. So what are the factors of 15c squared? Well, we have a bunch of them. Okay, you can write 5c here and 3c here. But basically, the factors of this thing, okay, this leading term, are going to go in the first position of these binomials. In other words, they're going to go here and here. So we have 15c or 3c, or maybe 3c and 5c. I'm sorry, not 15c, 5c and 3c. Again, these are the factors of 15c, because 5c times 3c is 15c squared. Okay, so hopefully I'm not misspeaking and everyone is with me. Okay, so 3c times 5c, 15c squared, but we have a ton of other ways we can kind of set this up, right? So we can have 5c, 3c, or 15c and 1c and 1c and 15c. Now, let me see here, 5c and 3c. Is this redundant? Let me just kind of check here. Yes, it is. Well, actually, this is the answer. Okay, so we don't, let's suppose we didn't know the answer. So all these are possible ways we can set up our binomials, right, with this 15c squared. So we could put in the factors of 15c squared in these various ways. Then what we need to do after that is put in the various factors for 4, all right? So we can have 1 and 4 here, or 4 and 1 right here, 4 and 1. You can have 2 and 2. These are all the various factors of 4. Now, I'm not going to list them all, but once you have all these various combinations, what you want to do is look for the one that works, right? So this is kind of referred to sometimes as the guess and check method, okay? But it's a pretty common way that people learn factoring, And the way you kind of check to see if you got this right is you multiply these two terms like this, the inner terms and the outer terms. So you just kind of look with these various combinations and you go, all right, let me see, -1, and that's 3c. That's a -3c. And then 5c and -4 is a -20c, all right, negative or 5c and -4, -20c. So when these two terms, or when these two things right here, when they add up to this middle term, -23c, well, that is when you know you have the right factors, okay? Now, again, this is not a full, complete factoring lesson. That would just take too long. So I could definitely teach you factoring, and there is a lot to cover, right? There's, how to factor out the greatest common factor, special factoring rules, and typically in algebra course, you're talking about like a full chapter of information. Okay, so hopefully most of you are still with me, but I'm going to show you a kind of unique method to be able to factor trinomials, right? Quadratic trinomials, and this method works well for people who get confused with this particular method. So I think it's something that you should know. All right, so here again is the answer to this problem, right? So 15c squared minus 23c plus 4. This is kind of like a problem within a problem. The factors of this are the following. Okay, so I'm going to show you a unusual technique, but this is a great, fantastic procedure, and it's one I think you need to know. All right, so here is how this goes. So here is our problem, our quadratic trinomial. Now we want to try to factor this. So again, we're looking for two binomials. Now we know that 15c squared, again, we're looking for some sort of factors where 15c squared, the factors of this are going to be in this position. So this is the kind of way I just showed you, all right? But this is not the way we're going to approach this, okay? All right, so this is how this procedure works. First of all, you need to have this in a standard form. In other words, highest to lowest power. So your squared, your middle term, and then your number, right? So it has to be in this order. So in other words, you couldn't have 15c squared plus 4 minus 23c. Has to be in this order. Okay, so I'm going to give you a procedure here, and if you get confused or if you need to kind of rewind the video, that's perfectly fine. All right, so once you have this in standard form, you're going to take this number here, which is called the leading coefficient, and you're going to multiply it by the number. So 15 times 4 is what? That is 60. Okay, so now that we have that number, we're going to list all the factors of 60, okay? And there's always going to be pairs here, right? So 60 is what? 1 times 60. It's also 2 times 30 or 3 times 20. But this is a positive 60. So the factors of positive 60 is a positive 1 times a positive 60 or a negative 1 times a negative 60 because a negative times a negative is also positive. All right, so we need to list all these combinations of the factors of 60. So 2 and 30 or -2 and -30, 3 and 20 or -3 and -20. Okay, so once you've done that, and right now a lot of you are probably saying, boy, Mr. YouTube Math Man, this looks like a lot of work. Well, once you practice this procedure, you don't necessarily have to do all this, make this entire list. You'll get better at it, but I'm just kind of showing you how it works. All right, so once you have all these factors listed, you're looking for the pair of factors that add up to this middle number, right? So what is that middle number? -23. Okay, so which pairs of factors add up to that middle number? Well, here is -23. -3 plus -20 is -23. Okay, so that means that we want to use these factors in some way. Now, let's suppose you list all the factors here, let's say of 60, and there are no factors, okay, that add up to this middle number, -23. Well, guess what? Well, that's basically an indication that this is prime. In other words, you cannot factor the polynomial. All right, so what do we do with -3 and -20? Well, what we're going to do is write that -23 right here. Okay, so instead of writing this as -23c, we're going to write it as using these two factors, right? So we're going to use -20 and -3, okay, because -20c and -3c is -23c. Now, some of you might be saying, well, does it make a difference if I write -3c here and a -20c here? Does order make a difference? It does not, okay, because I'm going to show you the next step here, and some of you may think that order makes a difference. So in other words, you could put your 3c here and your 20 here or your 20 here, and your 3c here. But the main point is this. Our problem is 15c squared minus 23c plus 4. We're just rewriting this negative 23c. We're breaking it up in this manner, okay? Negative 20c plus negative 3c. And again, we get these numbers by those factors that we took a look at when we multiply 15 times 4. Okay, so stick with me. I know a lot of you are saying, Mr. YouTube Math Man, my hair is sticking up. This is already too much. Well, this will make sense, okay? If this is the first time, that you're seeing this, it is a lot to take in. Okay, so now what do we do? Well, I'm going to show you a technique where we can get the factors here. Okay, in other words, we can factor this trinomial. All right, so what do we do? Well, we're going to take this problem now, 15c squared minus 20c plus negative 3c plus 4. Remember, this is still negative 23c, but what we're going to do is group factor. So we're going to create two groups, the first two and the last two, and then we're going to factor out the greatest common factor. Okay, so what is the greatest common factor here? So we have 15c squared and negative 20c. Well, what we can do is factor out a 5c. Now, of course, if we don't understand how to factor out the GCF, that will be a problem. But 5c times 3c is 15c squared, and 5c times negative 4 is negative 20. Okay, so we just factored out this 5c here. And now over here, okay, we have negative 3c plus 4. Now here is the goal. What we're looking for is the same factors. Okay, so in other words, we have this 3c minus 4. We would hope that we can get a 3c minus 4. Well, we don't have a 3c minus 4 right here, but we have something pretty close. We're looking for the same factor, right? Same binomial factor. Now, we don't have it yet, but I can easily turn this into a 3c minus 4 by factoring out a negative 1. All right, so if I take out a negative 1 times 3c is negative 3c, and negative 1 times a negative 4 is positive 4, and now we have the same binomial factor. Okay, so what we could do is factor that binomial out, all right? And this, I know, is going to be confusing if it's the first time that you're seeing this, but factoring, gives a lot of people, some challenge. So we can factor this out as the greatest common factor. So we're left with 3c minus 4, and right here is going to be the other binomial, 5c and minus 1, or negative 1. That's going to be the other binomial. Okay, now I know a lot of you are just kind of, like overwhelmed. They're like, this is super hard, Mr. YouTube Math Man. Why'd you show me this procedure? I like the other procedure better. Well, both methods are fine, and I would encourage most people to really kind of stick with that guess and check method, the first method. But if you're really having a tough time with this is a procedure that you can use every single time and get the right answer. Okay, so again, here is the answer, 5c minus 1 times 3c minus 4. So that means that our numerator here, okay, 15c squared minus 23c plus 4, we can factor this way, 5c minus 1 times 3c minus 4. Okay, so I know we're like, are we almost done, Mr. YouTube Math Man? Well, not quite yet, because now we have to factor the denominator. All right, so let's go ahead and use the same procedure. This is going to be a little bit easier, 10c squared plus 3c minus 1. Let's go ahead and do that right now. Okay, so again, you could use the guess and check method, which would be pretty easy, not too difficult for this problem. That's why you want to know both procedures, but let's just go ahead and practice this procedure that I just showed you. Okay, so what we're going to do is take that 10 and multiply it by negative 1. So we're going to end up with negative 10. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and list all the factors of negative 10. So they're always going to be pairs. So 1 times 10 and 2 times 5 are going to be the pairs of factors. So to get to a negative 10, you have negative 1 times a positive 10, or positive 1 times a negative 10, or a negative 2 times a positive 5, or a positive 2 times a negative 5. But what you're looking for is the pair of factors that add up to a positive 3. And you can see that it's this combination right here, right? Negative 2 plus a 5 is going to be a positive 3. This will give us a negative 3. Okay, so hopefully I'm not going too quick, and hopefully I haven't misstated anything. But anyways, again, if you are confused, just pause the video, rewind it, or maybe take a look at my other videos on simpler problems. Okay, so let's go ahead and rewrite 3c as a combination of negative 2c plus 5c. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that now. And remember, the order doesn't make a difference. Okay, so here is our 3c. We're going to write 3c this way. Okay, 5c plus negative 2c, that's the same thing as 3c. Now, a common question is, do we have to write the 5c here and negative 2c here, or could I write my negative 2c here and my 5c here? It doesn't make a difference. It'll work out the same in the end. Okay, so here's our 3c. It's 5c plus negative 2c, and now we are going to group factor. So we're going to group factor, or we're going to factor the GCF out of the first group and then factor out the GCF in the second group. All right, so let's go ahead and do that right now. So 10c squared plus 5c, we can factor out a 5c. So 5c times 2c plus 1 gets us back to 10c squared plus 5c, right? You can always check by multiplying back in. So 5c times 2c, 10c squared, 5c times 1, 5c. All right, so here, again, we're trying to look for this factor over here, but we don't have a 2c plus 1, we have a negative 2c minus 1. So always look to factor out a negative 1 if you have something that's pretty close. So this will typically, fix the problem, right? So if you have something that's not quite there because the signs are different, just factor out a negative 1. So negative 1 times parentheses 2c plus 1 gets us back to negative 2c minus 1. But the key here is that we have a 2c plus 1. So that is going to be one of the binomial factors. And the other binomial is going to be 5c minus 1, right? So we're going to put that in the other binomial, and there you go. Okay, so we are almost there. I know this is a lot of work. Okay, so what we have here is this rational expression, and we did a lot of work to factor both the numerator and the denominator. Okay, so let's go ahead and take the next step. We are almost done with this problem, but before we finish up, I'd like to, ask you, could you please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel? Now, you might think, hey, Mr. YouTube Math Man, this video is confusing or it's a lot of stuff. Well, I totally get it, right? I've been teaching math for decades, but, I put videos out there, or I put videos on YouTube like this to really try to help people, okay? Really try to help them in mathematics. So if you're struggling with factoring, well, a lot of people do, okay? But I try to put a lot of effort into my videos to try to make them clear, understandable, and interesting, okay? And it is a good amount of work, but it's something I love to do, but I need your support. And the best way you could support this channel so I can reach as many people as possible is simply to hit that subscribe button. And if you're going to do that, hit that bell notification as well. And again, if you need to really learn factoring, you may want to check out my Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 courses. You can find the links to those in the description of this video. All right, so even myself, I'm like, boy, this is a long video. I knew it would be a lot of work, this particular video, but I don't want to rush it, okay? I don't want to just fly through, how to do this problem. Like, hey, you do this, this, and this, because most people will be like, yeah, that's good for you, but I still don't really understand the steps. Okay, so we are basically done because the hard work here was to factor the numerator and the denominator of this rational expression. And you can see we have like factors in the numerator and the denominator. Okay, so we have a 5c minus 1 here and a 5c minus 1 here. So we can simply cross cancel those factors, and whatever is left over is the answer. Okay, so effectively we reduce this rational expression, or fraction. We simplified it to a simpler fraction or rational expression, which of course is 3c minus 4 over 2c plus 1. All right, now I know that algebra can be, one of these things where you're just like, this is why I don't like math, Mr. YouTube Math Man, just give me the easy problems. Well, math is all relative, okay, in terms of, maybe for some people this is easy, maybe for some people this is hard, but here is the key. If you really want to understand algebra or mathematics, you have to just, approach the topic one skill at a time, right? You can't go fast. You cannot rush this stuff. So in other words, if you don't know how to factor numbers, okay, you're going to have a tough time factoring polynomials. If you don't understand how to factor out the greatest common factor, well, you're not going to be able to factor trinomials. So everything kind of builds upon itself. So if you don't understand a particular skill that you're learning, let's say in a math course, if you have a tough time on this chapter or this chapter, well, you just can't be like, well, I hope I never see this stuff again. No, I can promise you these skills will be needed in the future. All right, so hopefully you learned something new in this particular video, especially with this factoring technique. This is not a common technique that is taught, but hopefully for those of you that are struggling, factoring quadratic trinomials, you may want to try this particular procedure out. Okay, so with all that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your math adventures. Thank you for your time and have a great day.